Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, I have a game where I decided to play some defensive elite spec, and I play a comp that, is pretty popular, but I just don't end up playing it a ton, especially when I'm on elite spec. My opponent here is Cobalt White, who decides to go for a Sledgehammer Marksman opener, and I decide to go with elite spec, which has Sledgehammers and Void Eyes. Now, usually I'd be playing Void Eyes aggressive, but here I was kind of down to play it, more defensively or even long range, as I am running Suppression Shot and Range Enhancement, which should allow me to contest any long range units. And that was pretty much the game plan that I was going to go for. Now, my chaff clear is not fantastic here on round 1. I only have Sledgehammers, but I thought it would be smart to go for some crawlers and make sure that these marksmen don't all lock on to, all of my important units. And so that is what I'm going to prioritize, but I will need something to clear chaff in the long run. For now, the Sledgehammers might be enough. I might be able to just buy a third one and be kind of okay. But, that is something that I have to think about. My opponent here, by the way, is a Rhino Specialist, and we get a pretty interesting setup where they kind of play mid-range, but slightly on the left side of the board. I decided to stack the right side. I thought they would attack over here because there's the magnetic barricade and this turret on the left, but they decide to kind of, slightly bias that side of the board, which can be nice. Every now and then you will just get a scenario where you catch your opponent off guard, kind of like this, and you end up just pushing into an empty side of the field. Although I guess you could say roughly the same thing for myself. I'm going to put the crawlers somewhat further back. I'm not too afraid of, my Sledgehammers tanking a couple of shots. And looks like we're going to do just fine, at least on this mid side of the board. The left side is being slowed quite significantly by the magnetic barricade, but the marksman with its range will lock onto my tower and actually get the debuff first. Maybe with a good second debuff timer here, I might be able to take this one. It would be nice because I am elite spec after all, and with 100 extra resources and the fact that the units I recruit on round 1 are level 2, you do tend to be favored on the first round. But it's awfully close here. The Voiders are doing a pretty good job, but that marksman is working hard. I will win, but it's not a massive victory. And curiously, nothing levels. I really thought maybe this marksman would grab one, but it's close, but not quite there just yet. Which honestly is nice because level 2 marksman is capable of one-shotting level 1 sledges, which often drastically improves the speed at which the opponent clears your board. Round number 2, we get the EMP, which is a spell that, I've said it before, but I really like picking this on round 2 if I don't need anything else. And here I don't really need anything else. My opponent goes for Intensive Training, which I do think is a fair pickup, especially against Elite. Can help you kind of just out-level the Elite player, because if you kill the enemy units, you'll get a lot of experience, and then on top of that, you have the Intensive Training. So not bad at all, and they use it to build a level 2 Arclight. Now, as for myself, I decided to go for a Fang here on the left side because I was a little bit afraid of some anti-air, or some air units rather, that would show up. I thought, for instance, that my opponent might go for a Wasp pack, and I hoped that the Fangs would be able to deal with that. So that's the reason behind the Fang, and I decided to go for Suppression Shot first on the Void Eyes to get a little bit of extra range. I felt like I didn't need Charge Shot in this instance, and I thought, well, maybe I'll end up going for some very early range as a second tech to properly, start beating my opponent at the range game. And it looks like for now we are doing quite well. I do get debuffed, but I think, again, the Void Eyes here will be able to get a round victory. Not a massive one, but enough to grab a bunch of levels, which will help me take down the enemy units just a little bit faster. Opponent here goes for Redeployment from the card selection. Powerful spell. We'll have to see what they decide to do with it, because you do kind of need to play a little bit more aggressive if you want to use this. And I was thinking, do I want the extended range Vulcan? And I settled for, yeah, I kind of do. I'm not too pressed to move my Sledgehammer to the left with the redeploy, because I'm quite happy to just buy a third Sledgehammer here, because I needed some chaff clear, and I'm going to need to bridge the gap between now and the moment I'll have the money to actually buy this Vulcan, which is going to be, a round or two from now, considering I'm elite spec. That's gonna cost me 800 resources to put on the battlefield. So, you know, if I can stall a little bit by using my sledgehammers as, you know, intermediary chaff clear, then that would be nice. Sledgehammer gets moved onto the right side. I add another Void Eye on the left to hopefully try and contest this Arclight, but Cobalt does grab a bunch of crawlers here on the left, which counters me, at least on that side of the board, since my Sledgehammer is more towards the middle. Perhaps I should have put it all the way on the left. But yeah, you can see that my Void Eyes here are not too happy about the situation, although the Fangs will do a decent job at least of, you know, taking them down and preventing me from getting debuffed. The right side is doing a lot better. I still have some Sledgehammers left. The Void Eyes are starting to overwhelm the enemy, but this Arclight now, after getting slowed by the Magnetic Barricade, gets a very nice debuff timer, and this time, I'm not going to end up on top. Marksman also starting to get some very scary levels, level 3, both of them. And now we enter round number 4, where Raiden shows up. Now this is a little bit scary because I wanted to get the Vulcan, but I'm not going to be able to do that because I was pretty sure that my opponent was going to pick up this Raiden, considering I'm playing Void Eye and Sledgehammer, which both get countered by the unit. I do get the Wasps, which I'm not too upset about. That's going to be somewhat useful. But yeah, you can see my opponent here kind of knows that I'm going to pick the Wasps and preemptively purchases double Mustang, as well as using the intensive training to make that Raiden a level 2 Raiden, which will be able to one-shot my level 2 Sledgehammers. So while I really wanted to go for a Vulcan here, if possible, I'm going to have to delay it ever so slightly and go for Marksman. You see that initially I thought about, ooh, maybe I need to, you know, patch this hole I have on the left side because the crawlers are being a bit of a problem. But I really have to make sure that I have at least a Marksman on the board here. So that's what I do. I thought that it would show up on the left. I don't really know why I thought that, because most of my Sledgehammers are on the right side, even though this one, I guess, was level 2 before the others. And yeah, I'm gonna miss this unit entirely, which is not gonna bode too well, because even though Wasp is decent into Raiden, you know, down a level and only one deployment versus one deployment, it's not exactly going to go too well. So suddenly I lose a lot of tempo here, and this is going to be a pretty massive loss on round number 4, sending me down to 3.5k hit points. Thankfully, I do have the EMP now again, although no tech has been clicked yet on that Raiden, and my opponent also gets a laser sight on said Raiden, or even a photon coating if they would want to simply, you know, tank the EMP, which would have been a pretty decent option. I think both here are fine. Laser sight kind of allows them to not have to click range this turn. I think, you know, both are perfectly acceptable. As for myself, well, I did put down the oil last round because I thought if I can slow him down, maybe I can clear the chaff, and then this round I can buy the Vulcan, set that on fire, and hopefully regain a little bit of tempo. I'm going to go for the photon coating in this instance because I felt like I didn't need the bonus range. I already have extended range Vulcan, so it should do just fine. The photon coating at least, you know, allows me to be a little bit tanky. Plus, you never know, maybe at some point EMP gets clicked on the Raiden and then this item will have some value. EMP is going to go onto the Raiden as well as the double Arclight, which I at least should be able to hit. And that's pretty much the round. I do buy 2 more Marksmen alongside my Vulcan, and I go for aerial specialization on the unit as well. Very important, as that allows me to instantly lock on to the Raiden. It also allows me to lock on to the one in the middle. And looks like with the fire here, we will at least be able to regain, you know, a little bit of tempo on our side. Raidens are going to fall, and with that, most of the DPS will be gone. Although, of course, I had to abandon the left side of the board because I really needed the DPS and the Vulcan on the right. Which means that we get debuffed, and there is still a level 3 Marksman in the mix. Actually, there's 2 of them, which may very well be able to kill this level 2 Vulcan. Keep in mind, this is not a regular level 2 Vulcan. It's an extended range one, so it's 35% squishier, which does make quite a big difference in terms of, yeah, how long it is able to tank. It does still tank long enough, and I get a victory here. With round number 6, even more spells show up, as we get Ion Blast, Electromagnetic Impact, and even more items. Efficient giant manufacturing as well, although this isn't going to do too much for myself. Spamming giants is too expensive on elite. I'm probably just going to have these two Vulcans for quite a long time. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to skip the Ion Blast or the EMP. I decided to go for the EMP because I felt like it would do roughly the same thing. If I manage to hit the Raidens, they will end up dying to my Marksman. And it's a cheaper spell that I might see a second time. And yeah, I thought here maybe my opponent would go Ion Blast, but they take the second laser sight instead. They also end up ranging their Raiden. They sell out of one of them, and then they move this one in the middle over to the left to very neatly dodge this EMP that I went for. I don't have a ton of money here to go for anything else other than another Vulcan, and I think grab a couple of attack enhancements plus maybe a crawler all the way in the back left. And I hope that now at least I'll have fixed my chaff clear problems. Though keep in mind this Raiden with the bonus range and the laser sight does hit pretty hard, and my Vulcan again is kinda squishy, so it's no surprise that it ends up dying before it even takes down the second crawler pack on the left side of the board. It'd be nice if my Marksman locked onto the Raidens, but it looks like that's not going to be the case. And while the right side is winning, the left side certainly isn't. I at least get one shot into one of the Raidens, but I really hope that my Marksman doesn't get caught off here. Although it kind of looks like it will. One of them dies, the other is still protected, but for how long is the question. I get a nice debuff, but it looks like my Marksman just doesn't quite have the range in this instance to be able to properly lock onto the Raidens, and so it will end up dying and take a little bit of damage. Round number 7, unit reinforcements show up, and there's nothing in here that I really need, so I'm looking to sell, which is going to be that Scorpion. I did think that my opponent might go for something tanky. A big problem for me here is that, you know, the Vulcans might get stuck on something, and the Marksmen aren't exactly the highest of DPS units. They're really good against the Raidens, but, you know, they don't have the bonus DPS against something like a Scorpion, especially when field maintenance gets clicked. Now here, I decide to range my Marksman first, and I think to myself, do I also need something like double shots? Because I could see that 2 of the Raidens were level 2 already, and 1 potentially even level 3. And at that point, you really, really need to have double shot on the bar as well as range to make sure that you lock on early, and again you stay behind those Vulcans. So a big turn, I loan and I sell my unit drop to be able to afford Vulcan range on my Marksman, and double shot on my Marksman, which hopefully will be able to get through this one Scorpion, but it is awfully tanky. And sadly, with the range on my Vulcan, which I was a little bit afraid of, I get stuck on that Scorpion on the left side, and things are not looking good at all. My opponent goes for oil on the right side, and that is pretty much going to be it, as my left side tower now falls, and I'm going to get collapsed on. Hopefully, though, I can still take down a couple of units. I have one high-level Marksman here. If I can take down one Raiden, they'll save me at least 350 hit points, but not much more than that. And so I'd take a big hit and go down to 1400 hit points here on round number 8. Now, round number 8 is the round that my electromagnetic impact comes back off cooldown. However, photon emission shows up on the same round, so I'm not going to be able to do too much with that EMP, and I opt to use it on the right side to at least get some value out of it. Aside from that, heavy armor here does look kind of tempting, just to throw onto, well, my level 2 Vulcan. You know, it is an extended range Vulcan, but every little bit of hit points does help. And I am very surprised here that my opponent went for EMP. And the reason I say that is because pretty much every single unit on my board already dies to the Raiden instantly anyway. The Void Eyes, the Marksman, the Chaff, they all die instantly. And yes, the Vulcan, you know, takes a couple of hits, but I don't even think the range enhancement is that important in this scenario. Especially on the left, it kind of just gets stuck. And so, yeah, I was a bit surprised about that. I am going to have to loan again. Temp range is important, and I decide to buy even more Marksman here. Triple recruited. And I level my left side tower to level 3. I also have my oil back off cooldown. I'm just going to keep this Vulcan in place to light that on fire. And then hopefully the fire will make sure that I kill all of the late chaff, and so my Marksman can still do their job. The tower level here is to really deal with this pressure, because I expect to lose the left side, but hopefully the Marksman being slightly further back with their new positioning here we'll be able to do something about it. Also, stacking them allows me to hopefully take down the Scorpion. And, I mean, that's pretty much the plan that I went for. The right side is still going to do well, but it all comes down to whether or not I can kill enough chaff. And honestly, this is looking rather good. I mean, of course, oil is just an extremely powerful spell in this scenario. And although I thought I would lose the left side, I end up winning it. And the right side didn't have a lot of, you know, stuff to worry about anyway, as my opponent kind of abandoned that side and also went for a level 3 tower. So I end up winning. And suddenly I don't mind my odds too much as I deal a good chunk of damage, and now we're roughly equal on round number 9. We do get unit reinforcements. Overlord here gets offered, which would be another source of photon potentially. I guess the one downside though is that the Overlord itself is quite expensive, and it's very bad against the AA marksman. This is just the power of the EMP spell and why I end up picking it so often when it shows up, because it's criminally underpriced, to be honest. It's really, really powerful late game, and this is exactly why. You know, it forces your opponents to take these type of things or take massive gambles, you know, at the cost of potentially, you know, being wrong and taking an EMP to the face when you have double-teched high-level giants in the air. And here they take a massive gamble. They know that the photon coating here is kind of, you know, very available. I thought that they might go for it, so I decided to EMP the right side again. And yeah, I, you know, don't call the bluff correctly here. I do go for some plays of my own though, with level 2 rhinos from the unit drop all the way in the back of the map here with armor enhancement to try and make sure that I catch all of these mustangs and kind of cripple, I guess, the chaff clearing and anti-wasp ability of my opponent. I also end up selling my Vulcan in front of the tower because it was getting stuck, and I move them towards the left and the middle where there's a little bit of chaff to deal with. Opponent also goes for rhinos here with the armor, but as you can see, they just kind of end up melting to my high-level marksman. I spawned even more because I had enough money to go for best partner, and I even went for double attack enhancement here. So yeah, these guys do hit quite hard, and without any wasps in the air at this point, the marksmen severely outrange the Raidens, and they have the damage to back it up. The right side is going to fall, the flanks are successful. With only one high-level Raiden left, this is not going to be enough for my opponent to win. And I think it might even be enough here to win, as I have almost all of my giants still alive, plus all the marksmen in the back. I will actually be able to convert this into a victory. I didn't think I would win this. Marksman does scale very, very well, and I think at this point of the game, it's probably gotten a little bit too much out of control. I think my opponent should have tried to tempo. Round 8, I think, was a particularly good one, where they got the photon emission. But I think a big mistake here was instantly going for EMP. It just doesn't really achieve much into my board. Again, almost all of the scary things die instantly, and the Vulcan is pretty squishy with the extended range, so it also dies rather quick to these level 3 Raidens that my opponent has. So I think here the main thing that you want to focus on is just making sure that the marksmen get bricked. Now there is a heavy armor there, but I really need to pick this photon, and I think that the best thing you can do is probably just try and play for, you know, the victory on this round. Make sure that you loan, make sure you temp range, and then probably just buy 2 more of these guys to, you know, really attack this right side of the board. The marksman will get stuck onto the scorpions, which means that the Raidens should be safe, and if you can just push in fast enough here, you should be able to collapse before this left tower falls, which is already at level 3. I don't think this marksman is very necessary, so I'm just going to sell it to retrieve some cash. And with the intensive, we can make another one of these tanky dudes on this side of the board. I'm going to go for the defense enhancement as well, just even more hit points. And we could missile this crawler to try and get in as quick as possible. There is a redeploy, but honestly, I'm not even sure if we need to use this. I wouldn't know what to do with it, but let's see. Because now we're stacking, you know, we have 2 level 3 scorpions with field maintenance, with double defense enhancement, and the photon coating on top of it. You know, that is rather potent. And as you can see, we also take down the Vulcan rather quick, because aside from being tanky, they do pack a punch when they're this high level. We get the tower debuff. And now we just end up collapsing here onto that left side. And yeah, that will be plenty to get the victory. Well over 2,000 damage there. I think I only had 1,400 left. So that would have been the correct move on this particular round. And yeah, I mean, marksman, they will eventually have DPS, but generally speaking, you know, in the earlier stages, they still do struggle to deal with this type of stuff. I think that this is a play that you can make because it's very unlikely that I'm going to buy a melting point on elite. I don't run EMP, but either way, it wouldn't have mattered because there was a photon emission spell. But yeah, you just kind of got to, you know, stat check the marksman here and say, well, I can just stack all of the hit points on this particular round and yeah, play for the victory because my opponent had really good tempo in the early to mid game. Anyway, if you guys like this video, please leave a thumbs up and down in the comments below what you thought about it and yeah, what you thought of this elite defense game with VULCAN Marksman. Not exactly a comp I play often, and even less on elites, but somehow it happened to all line up in this particular game. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.